Body Politic, or scenes from the past, present, future and beyond. All gods and monsters. All gods and politicians. Or what do you get when you put all the world's politicians at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. Or Part 1. Play 1. The State of the Nation.
What is the state of the nation? Grim outlooks of death and taxation, and the certainty of long-standing suffering now buffering. The red line eked out by blindness rather than kindness, not to mention the wake of destruction.
If we take a sample of just one area we share, it doesn't take Marple or Poirot to locate the sorrow in the eyes of the girls and boys without their toys, or their love, or their happiness reboxed,
relabeled as weariness. This is serious. I ask you, tell me what the state of play is.
What the right and wrong way is. Make a nation wake up and stand up, step up to the trouble all around us, all the fight and all the fuss. And the leaders who lead us help the needy who need us. Don't stand by, but try and try and try and try and try and try.
There's more fish to fry for this nation that stands by rather than fight for the rights and the freedoms that light all of our souls that are now covered in darkness.
The sheer fear of what's in store, knowing we've been here before and still not learnt, but burnt ourselves, and again, and again, and again. And what for? Like there aren't textbooks teaching the warning signs. Not one says it's going to be fine, because you know that would be madness. Madness. Madness.
And that's what it is. That's its likeness. And you know yet you pretend you don't know. Your eyes open in bed. Another day you're not dead. And you smile.
Because instead of a war outside your door, you get into your new car and drive to the bank, where you shake hands and thank a man who, through his own plans, spun the world into decline and chaos. It's a fact. That's a fact. It's an unquestionable fact. So compare your life. So compare your life.
When you draw your money and the green colour makes a sunny outlook for those at the top, as I said. Not the children of war, not the nurse at the food banks, not the old people who lay dead in their bed from the cold, remembered only because they're old, not the protesters chained to green things, the last of those things, not the animals bred to be eaten or sheared or beaten or tested on, not the boys and girls marginalised and ostracised and made to feel different because they cut themselves or eat too much and such, because of what you and your friends taught them.
With your
magazines and your idealistic stick and universal, unattainable level of perfection.
It's not perfection. It's depression and suppression.
It's
obsession.
And not one person can penetrate these walls in our minds. Not to mention
the real walls we're building and gilding gold. So as long as those on one side abide by us and don't get their grubby hands on it, making marks, making imprints, telling generations after they were here, they were there, they were inside and all around us, they were everywhere, but we didn't care. And it's these aspects we should and must inspect, the actions and the shit of the body politic, because what they get away with is born of our own creation, our singular, collective, state of a nation.
Play 2, The Hearing, Part 1.
The committee acknowledges the chair and the participant. This hearing shall commence at 10 hours on this day, November 29th, 2019. Mr. President, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was only planning on calling my mother anyway, so naturally I was happy to put that off.
Do I detect a sense of sarcasm?
Sorry, no, you detect a sense of disdain.
For this hearing?
Among other things.
Like?
You.
Shall we proceed?
Absolutely, please. I'm actually very busy in my line of work. You must know that, right?
The chair acknowledges the public gallery and asks that order be kept. Mr. President, can you tell us about the conversation that took place between you and the Secretary of State on July 4th this year?
Absolutely. If it's the conversation I think you're referring to, it'll be the one where I instructed the Secretary of State to eat her own hands, in accordance with an executive order I gave the day before.
And what was that executive order?
The day before?
Yes.
It was essentially an executive order that asked the Secretary of State to eat her own hands.
Could you tell us how the signing of that executive order came about?
Well, somebody prints out the order, the press all gather around, I use something, usually a pen, which they keep for me in a very nice drawer, and then...
Sorry, Mr. President.
Well, I'm just a little confused as to your line of
My
questioning.
apologies, Mr. President. I mean how the order came about in the first place.
Oh, I understand.
You understand.
I understand now. So, as
take your time.
I don't need to take my time. I got this. Trust me. Now, I was elected on a key promise. A promise to allow the great people of this country a decision, well, a choice, on the hands of the Secretary of State.
That's unusual, right? To give that choice, such a big choice to the country.
No, I don't think so, no. We had campaign research that suggested, well, implied, that people felt this was a reasonable solution to previous mistakes made by previous Secretaries of State. And when something is that big of an issue, it's only right that we take it to the country.
I see. What was the result?
Well, I'm sitting here and you're calling me president, so you tell me.
Could you be direct, sir?
No, absolutely.
Please just try to answer the questions as succinctly as possible. This is a very serious matter.
I understand. I apologize. Look, I was elected on a key promise and I was willing to follow it through to the best of her ability.
Her ability.
The ability of the Secretary of State to eat her own hands.
I see. Thank you. The chair yields to Senator B.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. President.
Morning.
What can you tell us of the policy before the election?
Well, as I'm sure you're all aware, there had been certain questions as to how the Secretary of State had used her hands in the past.
Such as?
I don't want to get into the details here, but the gist of it was that this was once a very well-respected person, area, role. He is very well-respected once upon a time, but since then we have seen a significant decline in this person. area, role is very significant, a big decline. Now, once a reputation goes, it's only a matter of time before certain questions start being asked. Questions such as, do we need a Secretary of State? Now, yes, I think we do, and I believe that the great citizens of this country believe we do too. No, the question was, how could we improve on this relationship? And we found that the election gave us a decisive yes to the idea of the Secretary of State losing her hands, and that it should happen through her own eating of them. And so we took the necessary steps.
Steps?
This was a democratic order. I signed the papers. It passed. That is democracy.
Since that vote, haven't we seen a shift in views somewhat?
No, I don't think we can trust the polls, do you? The same polls that I wouldn't be sat here.
Mr. President, do you at least agree with some of the evidence which showed at the time that this act would both inhibit the ability of the Secretary of State to work and cause considerable physical and mental pain?
I'm gonna stop you there. Those experts, okay, they were guesstimating, to borrow a popular phrase. Look, it was up to us not to study this thing so much, just to simply get it done. Yes, get it done. To see that it was done properly, and a success made out of it. That is democracy.
It all sounds a little pig-headed, don't you think?
No.
Can views change?
Yes.
Have they?
No.
Not any?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr. President, just for the record, you are stating that you do not believe one view has changed since the election, or indeed since the order signing, or let's say in the last hour, minute. Not one view in the entire country?
Not one, as far as I know.
Thank you. I yield back. Thank you. The chair yields to Senator C.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for being here today. And I want to thank you for the work you've done this past year. We appreciate it. And I have to say, I find this hearing frankly unconstitutional and a deliberate tactic on the part of the then party to undermine this government and the us party.
Thank you, Senator. I have to agree with you.
Thank you. Nevertheless, can you clarify one thing for me?
Since I'm here, why not? I'd love to.
This measure, was it taken lightly?
No, look, levity aside, absolutely not. I understand fully the implications of what this will do. I use my hands all the time.
And you believe, do you not, Mr. President, that this was done for the better of the country, and so it's necessary?
Absolutely. For the better, I believe that.
Not to mention the great implications on our nation as a whole.
Exactly that, Senator.
Is it true that you were, at one time, not in favor of the policy?
No, that is overstated.
Mr. President.
I thought you were meant to be on my side.
Mr. President.
That is somewhat true.
Why then did you change your mind?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. But no, I changed my mind because it was the will of the people. And I will enact the will of the people. That is democracy.
Thank you. Chair, I move to suspend this hearing on the grounds of insufficient evidence.
Overruled. There are still questions to be asked. They will be heard.
I yield.
Thank you. The chair yields to Governor D.
Mr. President. Mr. President, what were the overall figures of the election policy, the vote tally?
I don't have them on me.
All right, well, roughly, Spence.
Roughly, I would say 49% to 51%.
A little divisive.
Extremely decisive.
I said divisive.
Oh, I thought you said decisive.
No, divisive.
Divisive. No, I don't think so. I think that in the end, most issues become bipartisan, and democracy is democracy.
Meaning?
Well, meaning most people wanted the Secretary of State to just get on with it and eat her own hands. We find that people will put aside their views, their votes, to see that democracy is put into course, because they know that above all else, the preservation of democracy is fundamental, whatever the issue.
Whatever the issue.
Whatever the issue, absolutely. No matter how destructive, however irrational, however permanent, the only duty I have is to the great people of this country. We politicians, we don't decide. We represent. Now, whether you want the president, me, I'm not going to eat my own hands. Whether we want the Secretary of State to eat her own hands or not is besides the point. I signed the order because the country asks me to.
51%.
Exactly. That is democracy.
Well, it sounds tyrannous.
Well, I wouldn't like to say.
Oh, you don't have an opinion.
You'll forgive me for not implying my party is tyrannous. You'll
simply
forgive me for not doing that.
I'm interested in what you consider to be decisive. A margin of 2% is decisive.
One vote is enough.
Did you vote in the election, sir?
Of course I did.
So you had some hand in it.
I had one vote. I wouldn't call that tyrannous.
And yet, as you say, one vote is enough.
Absolutely. Democracy.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. We are going to take a short recess, but before we do, the President would like to read a statement on the Secretary of State. Is that correct?
That is correct.
This relates to her current condition.
That is right.
The Chair yields to the President.
My people, yesterday morning at 9:02 a.m. precisely, I ordered the Secretary of State to begin enacting the democratic will of the people, in line with Executive Order 951 under the Will of the President Act 2019. I can confirm that the Secretary of State successfully ate her own hands.
The public gallery will yield.
I'm certainly giving her a big hand. Now, come on. I can confirm that the Secretary of State successfully ate her own hands after 17 hours. During this time, she fainted 7 times, only had to receive a small amount of pain medication, and only 2 blood transfusions. 2, remember, only. She began with the thumb, but this proved very difficult. Extremely brave, but very difficult. Now, after 3 hours, she started from the pinky. This proved more of a success, and the other digits followed soon after. Flesh, blood, muscle, nerve, ligament, and bone. Now, she is currently in emergency care, but is said to be in good spirits. I have yet to visit her, but I mean to as soon as this hearing has concluded. Now, I have instructed my team to issue the footage of the Secretary of State's brave actions, and they are brave, extremely brave, to the citizens of this great country to access, and it will also be posted online for the citizens of the world to view. Now, my friends, this is no small act, and it will change us. But it was a success. It is democracy, and this party has ensured the greatest possible outcome. Now is not the time for argument. We must come together as a nation to help the Secretary of State through this new and exciting time in her life, indeed in all of our lives. There has been some talk that she will not be a part of this administration moving forwards. I want to say that that is categorically untrue, fake news. She is a valued member of this government and will remain so. She is a valued member and a proud defender of this nation, as we should all aspire to be. I hope to lead with as much courage as she has clearly shown. God bless her. God bless all of you. And God bless our great, great democracy. The President yields.
hard place.
Let me start by saying I'm extremely happy you're here.
Oh, listen, I'm also happy.
That's fantastic. Let's have a drink.
Oh, yes, let's have a drink, huh?
Whiskey.
That's the one.
Lovely. Thought you'd be a bourbon drinker. You look like the type. A real bourbon drinker.
You hit the nail
On the head.
on the very head.
Down on walks it is.
Have you lived here long?
Long enough.
Yes, very long time.
Another?
Oh, if it's not
Don't
too
you dare!
I offered, and I would more for you if I could. You're very kind. You're very kind. You're too kind, then.
That's possibly true.
And do you own it?
The house.
Yes, all mine. Ah, high ceilings.
Oh, well, only the best.
And beams.
Beams?
No. Beams in the ceilings. In the high ceilings. Good beams in those high ceilings.
Ah, yes.
Oh.
Teak. Good old-fashioned teak beams.
You can tell a lot about a house by its beams, you know. The quality, the quantity, of course, and the height.
Yes, but please go on.
The higher the beam, the more the worth.
Oh, yes. Would you like to see them?
I can.
I mean, up close. I could get a ladder.
No, that's too much trouble.
Don't be silly. Well, I wouldn't go down. I wouldn't offer if I wasn't happy to. A ladder. 4 beams for the closer look at my beams.
Could I trouble you for a spot more bourbon, old boy?
Certainly. I'll get Patricia to get the ladder anyway.
Patricia?
My wife.
Wait. Your wife gets a ladder for these beams?
Not a ladder.
Oh, good God, no.
Not a ladder. The ladders.
Ladders?
Well, I shall need a ladder too, old boy. Be dangerous for you to go up the ladder and me to come up the rear. If you slip, I shall have you on my shoulder, and I have terrible ping-pong shoulder at the moment, so that wouldn't do. Patricia! Get the ladder!
Surely I could just go up and take a look myself.
On your own? Well, who will talk you through the beams?
Talk me through.
The details, the fine details, the grooves, the nooks, and the crannies, the shades of brown and tan. I think there's some grey in some of them too.
Oh,
it's fascinating.
I'm rather looking forward to it.
I want to get a good whiff as well. That old smell. Nothing says the word of a bean than that good old beany smell.
What's it smell of?
Wood, of course.
Oh, yeah.
A smoky wood.
Oh, good grief!
What?
You never said! You never gave even the slightest indication!
What is it?
I'm speechless!
Oh! Ha! I see!
I've never seen such a lovely ladder!
100% stainless steel.
Oh.
I have it in the kitchen as well. Marvelous stuff. Goes well with the marble counter. Wonderful stuff for making love on, if you catch my meaning. My exact meaning.
Rather.
Patricia loves it. The coolness laying back.
Oh, I'm laying back and staring at the beams, no doubt. The beams behind
Yes! No doubt! Oh. You married?
No.
Oh, it's a wonderful thing. Yes, wonderful thing to be married. Patricia and I do everything together. We go everywhere together.
taking her places, you know, showing her all.
Does she work?
No! A woman should work if her husband is a real husband. A good man makes the money. No, she just cooks and cleans and takes care of the children. Oh, children, darling little things. Around here somewhere. Done a wonderful job with them, we have. We've got one old to Oxford and one old to Cambridge.
There'll be arguments around the dinner table then.
Yes, I suppose you're right.
Any more in the pipeline, so to speak?
Nothing more in my pipeline. We want to settle down now. It's time to retire. Patricia will always have the house. It's her palace to do with as she pleases. I just like helping her out with her ideas, you know, taking over her stuff, taking the money for her, things like that.
Very good of you, very good of you, very good of you. She doesn't find the whole thing stifling, though, does she?
Nonsense! Does she look stifled?
I see what you mean.
Stifled, my dear boy, you do make me chuckle. Another drink?
I don't want to be drunk.
Patricia always stabilizes the land with me when I'm up. Good. Get your sozzle on.
Get my sozzle on?
It means drunk. Oh! I saw it on American television.
Well, why not then get my sozzle on?
Oh, it's rather good, isn't it?
It is rather. I usually find Americanisms trite, but I rather like sozzle.
Yes, Patricia likes sozzle. Don't you, Patricia? See, I told you.
Oh, goodness, what positivity.
Oh, God, she'll back me whatever. Such a marvelous woman. Right! The ladders are in place. Shall we get stuck into these beans?
Yes, let's.
You take left here, and I'll take right here. You get my meaning?
I take the one on the left, you take the one on the right.
You get my meaning?
Not too sozzled yet.
Indeed.
Please. Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please.
Please. Please.
Don't do that! We haven't our stabilizer yet.
Oh.
Patricia! Darling! Will you come and stabilize our ladders, please? There you are.
Why not? Oh, dear boy, that's hardly fair. You barely gave me a chance. Where was the whole ready, set, go?
That's not fair. Patricia knows that. Her favourite television programme wasn't on yesterday. Shit happens, as the Americans say.
How eloquent.
Well, there is, isn't it? Come along, then. Yes.
Oh, my. Will you look at these beams?
Yes. See the shape. See the length and the taper. See the colour. See the light and the shade. See the grooves, the lines, the marks and the holes. See the height, the breadth, the power, the majesty, the nature. See.
It really is quite extraordinary.
Yes. Patricia, are you keeping an eye on these ladders?
I say, I have a rope around my beam here.
Oh my. I do too. Oh. I can put my head through mine.
So can I.
Oh, are you getting the idea?
I'm rather coming round to it, yes.
I knew you'd enjoy it. Upper height, surveying what's yours. There's no better feeling. You see, I believe, and I think it's true of most.
To go on.
I shall. That in life, one is simply being offered a series of choices. It would be stupid to suggest that these be defined as good or bad, or right or wrong, but certainly, one choice will lead you down one path, and the other will lead you
down another.
Exactly right. You see, I look at these beams, this house, Patricia, as a set of good decisions made by the choices presented to me. But, and I am under no illusion, if I wanted to change it all, change it in a second, I am only one choice away. From the good or the bad, from lunacy to logic, from foolishness to courage, but be under no delusion. I am the master of my fate. Say, for instance, I were raped, tortured, controlled, and my rapist were in a position where I might murder him. I am presented with a choice. Do I make the leap, the jump, push? Do I relinquish my moral and ethical code to take the life of another, however evil? I don't like to use that word, but do I?
I don't know, do you?
That's not the point. The point is, I have a choice. Isn't that right, Patricia? I mean, you agree with me, don't you? Oh, she's not speaking. She's quiet today. Oh.
Can't be easy running the house.
Well, I should expect that's the least of our problems. But there we are again. That's her choice. Wonderful life, isn't it?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful life.
Play 5. The Silence of the Wheat. A parody.
He's past the others. The last cell, you keep to the right. I'll put out a chair for you.
It's very good, thank you.
I'll be watching. You'll do fine.
Ever since I first stepped through the door behind me as Prime Minister, I have striven to make the United Kingdom a country that works not just for a privileged few, but for everyone, and to honour the result of the EU referendum. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
Good morning, Therese.
Michael Gove, may I speak with you?
You're one of John Burkow's, aren't you? May I see your credentials? Closer. Closer. Therese May. That expired in 2019. You're the Prime Minister that negotiated Brexit, aren't you?
I was turfed out.
That's very slippery of you, Mrs. May.
I'm now on a mission to find out the truth.
Sit, please. Tell me, what did Farage say to you?
Farage?
Forgotten him so soon. Yes, filthy Farage in the cell next door. He hissed at you. What did he say?
He said he could smell my cunt.
Oh, you brought Jeremy with you.
No.
My mistake. You wear Victoria Beckham eau de parfum and dance to African drums to distract people. But not today.
Did you do those drawings, Michael?
Ah, yes. That's Donald Trump touching himself under the table at the United Nations Leaders' Banquet. And that's Margaret Thatcher, in a bikini.
Wow, all that from memory.
Memory, Mrs. May, is what I have instead of a view.
Well, perhaps you can lend us your view on these ads used in the referendum.
John Bercow must be very busy indeed trying to work out the Leave win, if he sent me the worst Prime Minister in history since Anthony Eden, a man who confused the Suez Canal with a suet pudding.
I'm sorry.
Or maybe he's trying to pin it on that Beaujeu. Such a naughty boy. Tell me, how many women has he used?
They can't put a number on it.
Do you know why they call him the blonde bombshell? The papers won't say.
Well, it started as a bad joke. They said his hair was like golden flax and that he has the face of a hungry baby.
Witless and misleading. Why do you think he lies, Therese? Thrill me with your wisdom.
Well, it excites him. He's an Etonian after all.
You're so ambitious, aren't you? You know what you look like with your little cotton jackets?
It's actually polyester.
And your cheap kitten heels and your scarves that look like Vogue threw up on your chest.
Polyester's very strong.
You look like a rube. A well-scrubbed, hustling rube with a little taste.
It's wrinkle resistant.
Good nutrition has given you some length of bone, but you're not one more generation away from poor white trash or Bristol University. Are you, Prime Minister? And that accent you try so desperately to shed? Pure maidenhead. What was your father, dear? Was he an estate agent? Did he stink of those little tree air fresheners? And oh, how quickly the boys found you. On all those sticky fumblings in the backseat of Daddy's courtesy polo. And you're trying to get out, trying to get away, trying to get anywhere. Yes, all the way to the CSU. Conservative Students' Union.
You see a lot, Mr. Gold.
It's the glasses. They're plus 27.
I mean metaphorically.
I see. Metaphorically.
But I wonder if you could point that high-powered perception at yourself.
A government aide once tried to show me a document on the possible advantages of staying with the EU. I cut his pension and danced the pajanga.
Why the EU? Why leave?
Quid pro quo. You tell me something, I'll tell you something.
Like sexual?
No, nobody mentioned that.
What then? What do you want?
A pasty of the Cornish variety. The delicious meat wrapped in a salty pastry. Oh, yes. Oh, this is a sausage roll! And your story. Nothing about the referendum, about you. Tick-tock, not long till the departure day.
Go, go, go!
What's your earliest childhood memory?
Losing the chess championship.
And how did it make you feel? Quick, don't lie or I'll know.
Alone, I was only 30 years old.
That's very frank of you, Therese.
Quid pro quo, Michael.
Boris studied at Eton, one of 100 siblings. He might have flax for hair, but he's rotund, and an odd shape for a man of 24. That's why he might have a low ego, mightn't he?
I see.
What happened when you lost the chess game?
Sent away, shunned, orphaned.
Emotional austerity. This all started to make sense. They sent you away, didn't they?
Yes.
Rough neighbourhood?
Yes! Richmond Towns!
Checkmate. How long did you live there?
2 months!
Why? Did the rich farmer fuck you?
No!
Did it try to?
Quid pro quo, Michael.
Boris's last name is Johnson. Johnson like the baby shampoo. Baby like his face. Shams like the lies he tells. And poo like what I do when I do a number 2. Take the 2, add the 4, and carry the 5, and what do you get?
Gibberish!
Clever girl, you're so close in the way you're going to catch him. Do you know that? Ah!
But why the EU? Why leave?
You had 2 months. You left.
I ran away.
Why?
I just ran away.
No, just, Therese. You woke up. What time was it?
About 4 a.m.
Why?
I heard a noise.
What was it?
The gentle sway of the fields.
A load of crop.
It's the truth.
I was talking about the wheat.
I see.
They were harvesting a field of crop and you wanted to help them.
No, I wanted to save the crop.
But you couldn't.
I couldn't take it, so I ran.
To the fields of wheat. Naughty, naughty.
I grabbed some of the wheat and ran, but they caught up with me and took it to make bread.
You wake up some nights dreaming, don't you, of the strong and stable wheat cracking under your feet. Do you think if you could stop the EU from falling, you could stop the wheat from cracking? Do you think you can save the disappointment of your father, but the falling wheat reminds you of every chess piece, and here you are again, trying? Do You will tell me when the wheat stops cracking, won't you, Therese?
What has done this?
Look inside yourself, Theresa May, and you may find out! You may! You may!
Mr. Gove! Mr. Gove!
Play 6. A new system of classification. The GEC.
You may not recall the early days, but many do. You may not recall the great divisions in our society. Most do. History's primary job is to teach us, right? Right. The study of history might be seen as the direct opposite of science, in the sense that there is nothing to be tested, neither is there anything quantitative with which we can experiment. It is, however, absolutely necessary if we hope for our society to progress. Progress. It's a very interesting word, and it was for a long time a word that sat very nicely in a sentence about division or community. Now, we are making progress is a particularly scientific idea, yet that is where history and science split again. See, we know from much study that history is actually cyclical, something which science could never be. We don't unlearn the discoveries we make in science in order to rediscover them, and yet, in the past we have seen the same marchers off to war made again and again, despite treaty after treaty. The same levels of violence, murder, rape, despite our best efforts to suppress them, be it through punishment, treatment, rehabilitation, or the small shifting of moral code through, dare I say it, education. Indeed, history has taught us that the idea of a scientific progression for a society is absolutely achievable. Think of everything we have achieved. And yet, it has taught us that the psychology and the social biology of a human is not changeable, and progression is the mask worn by cyclical habits. I see some shaking heads. Ask yourself, why, when the first man was punished for rape, did not all men after never rape again? Ask yourselves. I see you looking to me for an answer, and I will tell you. Men, it is in your nature to rape. It is in your nature to murder your fellow man, your friends, your family, your children. It is in your nature to rape your fellow man, yourself, and your society. And that is why some 50 or so years ago, this global government began the GEC program, designed to engage with this very idea. The government enforced classification philosophy, and you will have seen this on many signs around your towns, in your homes, schools, and hospitals, is equality is a fallacy. But we'll get to that in a second. The objective of this trial scheme, for that is what it was at its inception, was to stop defining the nature of us as humans in terms of our actions as being behavioural, and rather to accept them as in our nature. In other words, instead of telling the rapist he is acting in a way that he shouldn't, we merely accept behaviour and create an environment which supports it, the mechanics of which I shall go into later. As the scheme became more popular, it became evident that this could permeate for the good other areas, chiefly the notion of prejudice. You will notice there is no prejudice or discrimination in our society, and that is because under the GEC, all humans accept their nature in order to find greater contentment with their circumstance. Models were then drawn up to define the strata of the classifications. There was some protest at first, but in the last 50 or so years, it has become part of our culture. Instead of fighting for so-called rights, people accept their classification and all that goes with it. For example, if we look at class 21,
I know exactly what I could expect. In class 21, sex is female. Therefore, less pay is expected. This seemed unfair many years ago because people seemed to believe that society should be fair, rather than just accepting that we are all different. Our skills are different, and fundamentally our nature is different. But do I have to accept my classification? What if I'm a young black male in class 40 or lower and I wish to own my own house? You would know from the classifications that simply isn't possible. So what can I do? Two options. I accept my lot. And we have found that the idea of acceptance psychology has led to more lives of contentment than that of the aspirational age of the mid-1900s to early 2000s. Or I can apply for classification reassignment. This can be costly, though some classifications are eligible for government funding. Common reassignments include heterosexual parents having their homosexual children reassigned heterosexual. This can bring their classification up higher. There is also skin pigmentation therapy and sexual organ reassignment. Many white women find that once they are reassigned as men, they are able to pay off their reassignment with just the extra pay from 1 year in their new classification. So you see, equality is a fallacy. We are not the same. We are different. And if we wish to have the things of another who is in a higher classification than our own, then we must change our nature, biologically and psychologically. Why am I telling you this? After all, the system has been around for over 50 years. It works. I mentioned I was involved in classification reassignments for those who pay. Of course, it is also used as a form of punishment for those who go against the law. You are here because you have engaged in activity which does exactly that. You are protesters, non-believers. You have attempted to deface our clinics, attempted to destroy government buildings, attempted to influence our elections. We therefore have no choice but to reassign your classification to the lower. As you are repeat offenders, you will be reassigned to class 1001. The lowest, the untouchable and the hopeless. Once you are reassigned, you will join the others on the streets of the lower class cities, the ghettos, with no clothing, no friends, no family, no opportunities, no homes, no food, no drink. Life expectancy is 2 years, though some live near 5 if they find a dog. This is not advisable, though. Living life, indeed, you ought to know. You will never be able to reassign. Prolonging your life is only prolonging your new nature, which in class 1001 is to disappear. You have chosen this path. What a shame. Please don't struggle. Equality is a fallacy. Begin the treatment.
Play 7. The Actress and the Producer.
Listen, Stan, I don't care. I want her. Yeah. Find me another one for the scene where he shoots up the place.
Someone to stand by the bar in slut heels. But listen, Stan, make her nice. Someone you can take home to your parents. But with big titties! Sort it out and quick. Yeah. Send her in.
Mr. Producer?
You're the actress?
That's right, I'm here about the job.
What job? I don't remember any job.
Oh.
Logan! Come in. Can I take your coat?
Oh, I'm okay.
No nonsense. It's hot in here. Let me take your coat and we can get started.
Okay.
Have I seen you before? You look familiar.
I don't think so.
Have you been in any movies?
Not any you've known.
Oh, well, we can fix that, I'm sure.
I did have a small part in a B movie, the horror flick a few years back.
Years? Well, you can't be much older than 17, can you?
I'm 22, Mr. Producer.
Take a seat.
My agent.
Oh, let's not fuss about that. I want to know about you. What do you like?
Well, I like dramas mostly, but I have done some comedy.
Oh, no. I don't mean movies. We'll get on to that. What do you like?
Oh, my hobby. Well, I like playing tennis and keeping fit.
That's a great game. There's a tennis club in the community where I live. You should come and play. Do you go out?
With friends? Yeah. You're a young girl in the big city. We try to have fun, me and my friends. This industry can be so tough.
You gotta work hard, play hard. You're very attractive. Won't be long before this industry eats you up. Right up.
I hope so.
Oh! You do you? You have a great smile.
Thank you.
Woo! Am I embarrassing you?
No, it's fine.
Do you like music?
Let's go, girls.
I thought this meeting was about the film.
Oh, it is! I'm sorry. I get too into things. I'm artistic. You'll have to forgive me. I find the music helps keep the juices flowing. Keeps me inspired. You like music?
Yeah.
Yeah, what music do you like?
Beyonce.
Oh, no, not that shit. Not talking about that commercial shit. You know what I mean. I know you know what I mean.
Can you give me an example?
Can I give you an example of the music you like?
No, I mean...
It's okay! I'm begging you! I shouldn't. You throw me off a bit. You're very attractive.
Thank you.
I like a lot of things. It depends on the mood, you know?
Yeah.
You vote Republican or Democrat?
Does that matter?
Well, in the grand scheme of things, to the country, no. To me, yes. To the chances of you getting this job, probably.
I'm a Democrat.
Oh, all women are Democrats.
Really?
To be a Republican, you have to have a certain summit. Women don't have it. It's not a bad thing. In my experience, it's a good thing. A certain ruthlessness.
They're not all women, though.
All of them.
But
Name one.
Nancy Reagan.
Democrat.
Barbara Bush.
Democrat.
Sarah Palin.
Woohoo! Fuck knows what this world. You can take the money from everyone to give to everyone, or you can take the money from no one to give to no one. It's up to you which one you want to do. Either way you look at it, the poor stay poor and the rich stay rich. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's power. That's politics.
Why are you telling me this? Can I read my lines?
How much do you earn?
In acting?
In life! How much are you worth? How much is your life worth? Could I count it? Could I take my wallet out of my pocket and count out the worth of your life and the money in my wallet?
Excuse me?
I have 50,000 in that drawer. Another 50,000 in the drawer in the bedroom. 250,000 in the hotel safe. Cash. So I'll ask you again. Can I count out your life in that money?
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about it. How bad do you need this job?
Oh, I want it.
I didn't say want, I said need.
Well, I can make bread with my...
Then get out.
Well, I need it then. I need it.
Then stop wasting my time and take off your fucking dress.
End of part 1.